Warnings to politicians from MI5 to beware of passing information to Chinese agents haven't stopped one former Conservative MP hoping to profit from his connections.
Democracy for Sale, working with campaigners led by donkeys, filmed this and shared the footage with ITV News.
I'm Peter Gagan for Democracy for Sale. And for the past 5 months, we've been working with the campaign group led by donkeys to investigate political access in Westminster. Basically, we've been looking at how cheap it is to get around our lobbying rules and to buy access without any records having to be kept. The thing that is so remarkable about this story, I think, is just how cheap it is. You know, we're talking today, as we record, a lot about this huge £9 million donation from Christopher Harborne to the Reform Party, to Nigel Farage. Well, the story we're going to tell you today involves just £5,000. And for that, we got to meet more than 10 Labour MPs and have lots of contact with government ministers. And all of this went through a single former Tory MP, who's a kind of node that facilitated all of this access. And this is my colleague from Democracy for Sale, Lucas Amin. Lucas, do you want to just tell the listeners and the viewers quickly, what did we do?
So this story all started around 9 months ago when a source in Parliament sent us some emails that were caught our attention, basically. What they showed is that Labour government ministers were doing events and fundraising dinners where corporate tickets were being sold for £250 a pop. And we couldn't see how those tickets were advertised online. And so we started to investigate.
Yeah, so we were really interested to find out, if you could sell a ticket to meet Rachel Reeves with no record of this anywhere, of West Street, and this wasn't declared anywhere, what else might be on offer? So we approached the firm behind this firm called Chamber Group, which is a firm run by former Tory MP Ben Howlett. And what we did is we posed as a company, a fake company called EC Strategies, which sounds really grand, EC Strategies. Has a really nice website if you Google it, or maybe at least it did, in Chinese and English. It talks about all our different customers. It talks about how we're based in Hong Kong and we've got lots of connections all around the world. Nice pictures of wind turbines. But the thing about EC Strategies is it doesn't exist. We made it up, we created it, and we created it as a company, a front company effectively. And this is supposed to be a Hong Kong-based consultancy working for a rich Chinese family office with interests in tech and in healthcare. So we created this legend, and we approached Ben Howlett's company, Chamber UK, and asked them, would they be interested in working for us? And frankly, I think we didn't really know what was going to happen. We thought maybe, of course, they might ask some questions with just a website. We probably wouldn't get very far. But knowing that Mr. Howlett was able to have all these meetings and these events with senior Labour figures, we're interested to see what might happen.
I have to go and have a beer with a mate of mine and then tell you about it. Fine.
So I did all the trade visits with China.
Once we started engaging with Howlett and the Chamber Group, true enough, we were offered a £350 ticket to go and meet with a bunch of Labour MPs, including Bill Esterton, who sits on the National Security Committee, the Joint Committee for National Security Strategy. And that was very interesting. And we were introduced to Esterton personally. But I think what we didn't really anticipate was that Howlett was perfectly prepared to approach more than 50 MPs on behalf of our fake Chinese company. And he had a remarkable ability to set up meetings very, very quickly at the drop of a hat.
They signed a contract. This fake company signed a real contract for just £5,000 with the Chamber Group. And in exchange of £5,000, they promised, and I quote, to provide our prospective Chinese investors in the healthcare and technology sectors with, quote, insights on the political and regulatory landscape in the UK, including insights gained through one or more conversations with members of the Parliamentary Labour Party. What does that mean? That means that they were saying, look, we're going to go and meet members of the Labour MPs for you, and we're going to set up all these meetings for you. This is exactly, as Lucas says, was happening just when all this China spying case stuff was happening, where there was a lot of concern about access for Chinese and frankly other foreign influence in our politics. And the thing I think that is keep coming back to with this was, this former Tory MP was able to get all this access for us, and none of it has to be registered because of the way our lobbying regulations work. So all of this went unregulated. None of it was registered anywhere. We got a lot of meetings.
Can I stop using the word China? If I say Hong Kong instead.
And one of the things that really struck me was how often the kind of concerns about China were being downplayed. There was different times when we were when Howlett was talking to MPs on our behalf, that he was kind of like downplaying these sort of concerns, making it sound as if not been very clear as well about what we were really trying to do, the kind of information we were trying to get, like presenting us as an investor in the community, presenting us as something he didn't know we were actually, because he was talking to a front person for this fake company. We didn't know anything about us. There was no there's no signs of any due diligence. I should say Chamber UK said they did standard due diligence, but we didn't see any signs of that.
Yeah, and the phrase that Howlett kind of alighted on in the end was that we were a private equity family office from Hong Kong. And it's true that we said we were based in Hong Kong, but we never referred to ourselves as a private equity house. That was something he kind of took on himself. And he was very careful in the way he sought to present the image of our company. So bear in mind, our contract was very clear that this was for prospective Chinese investors. This was for a Chinese firm.
In this case, totally is that we're talking about is a private equity, a family office based in Hong Kong. Frankly, because of Chris Bryant being my predecessor, we know what the relationship is like with Hong Kong. It's a lot easier than it is having a conversation with, say, Beijing in this instance. So at the end of the day, we are talking a Hong Kong office. We're not talking about, a state-owned party echelon sort of here.
In their response to us, Chamber UK did say they wanted to, they regretted any embarrassment or anxiety that might have been caused around this, and they accepted their responsibility for how these engagements had been framed.
We're a not-for-profit, so we're generally sort of just looking at how we can sort of increase the attractiveness of the UK from an investment point of view at a regional level and at a national level as well.
It's really interesting what these MPs were being told. They were being told that they were meeting a company that was interested in investing in their constituency. They were being told repeatedly that we were a Hong Kong-based company. China really wasn't mentioned. They were told by Ben Howlett and Chamber that this was part of their not-for-profit institute, a thing called Curia. But actually, this was a contract we'd signed, a for-profit contract we'd signed, again, for just £5,000. We never expressed any interest in these, in the constituencies of these MPs. We didn't know who they were. They were just kind of appearing. And it's really striking. There was actually so many meetings that our undercover reporter couldn't go to them all. Mr. Howlett went on his own to some of them and just sent us AI reports. That's how many of them there were.
A Labour Party spokesperson said that these meetings were pitched to MPs as a routine conversation about a potential investment in their local area. The MPs involved acted entirely appropriately throughout and did not share sensitive information that is not already in the public domain. Chambers Group said, "We also want to reiterate our concern that MPs and their staff were drawn into secretly recorded conversations under false pretenses. The group regrets any embarrassment or anxiety that this may have caused them."
They weren't paid to take our meetings. They were taking our meetings, I think, because they were being told it was of interest to their constituencies, which is the kind of thing you would expect MPs to do. And I think we're not suggesting that they had done anything wrong in this. Really, I think what this story shows is how easy it is to get to MPs, but also how easy it is to buy access and lobbying anonymously. But part of the Chamber Group is a thing called Politics UK, which you might have heard of. It's got almost 400,000 followers on Twitter. And Ben Howlett revealed that he bought a 50% stake in this Politics UK Twitter account, which often interviews Labour MPs, Labour ministers. He bought this for just £100.
How much does a 370,000 follower Twitter account cost?
The guy who owns it hasn't got a clue on business at all.
Really? That bought
About 100 quid.
100 quid? And he spent how long building that up?
6 years.
I was thinking 10 grand? More, maybe.
Quite. I'm like that Nigerian guy you're talking about. If you're on the internet working out who's a stupid person, basically in the world of politics.
And the person he's talking about, this is a young Conservative parliamentary staffer who sold it to him for just £100. And what was striking is, well, we were able to use Politics UK. We were able to pay Howlett. Well, we never gave him money, but we were able to offer to pay to get pro-China posts put up on Politics UK. So we were able to put out stories on Politics UK. And it's interesting, but when we went to Howlett for comment on our story, these posts actually started to disappear. The posts we paid for off Politics UK disappeared. And actually Politics UK started tweeting about our undercover investigation, saying that this had taken place, but without mentioning that Politics UK was part of the Chamber Group or really what had actually gone on. And they did all this before they came back to our request for comments.
This is suggesting that the US Embassy, which is somewhat very close to one of the most interesting fibre optic cables anywhere in London, is not doing what the Chinese are about to do in respect of having their embassy in. It baffles me. This is really random, but I obviously went out with Liam and all the rest on the China visits and all the rest in terms of break opportunities and all the rest. Question for you. Given obviously Pete's out next week in China, is that going to change things in terms of relations? Because
The MPs who engaged with us, they generally believed they were meeting with a non-profit policy institute, which is Howlett's Curia. And they were not aware that we were actually, albeit a fictional client, but a paying client for Chamber UK.
A couple of ministers at least were approached by Ben Howlett on our behalf. And actually in one private meeting, he told us that he and Chamber had drafted Labour's life science plan, which had been first published in opposition and then became the UK's official life science sectors plan. And he told us that the plan had been funded by big pharmaceutical companies who had funded Chamber and its Curia, which is part of the quote-unquote Chamber Group, to do the work.
this one is the piece of work we did for the we wrote the implementation plan for the government's life sciences life sciences industrial strategy, which was then given to the Shadow Minister that commissioned it, and now it's in government policy as the life sciences industrial strategies.
In response to our questions about Howlett's comments about writing this life science report for Labour when they were in opposition, Chamber Group said that it recognised that the way the report was described could have given some listeners the impression that it shaped policy to a greater extent than was the case, and that it regretted any confusion.
How do you have a conversation with someone about why you think this is an important thing? I'm like, well, I'm having these conversations anyway, so basically I get paid for having conversations with people I'm already having conversations. I have to go and have a beer with a mate of mine and then tell you about it.
I think it's very striking that Howlett insisted throughout our engagement with him that he doesn't do lobbying. He was much less clear about what his role actually is. You know, at different times he said, my role is to look at the policy environment, to provide due diligence. He said, I get paid for having conversations with people I'm already having conversations with. And, you know, at other times he just said that it's basically about going for beers with mates. One of his colleagues was much kind of clearer when he said, we're not lobbyists, but what we do with clients is all the behind the scenes stuff. So we would feed you or your client with all the information, the positions, the messaging, rather than a traditional advocacy. And that they do that because they think it's a better model.
And it's a better model probably because of exactly the way our lobbying laws are written and they work in the UK. And I think this is the important thing. And this is the thing that was really striking about our investigation. Chamber UK told us that they're not, they might be described as lobbyists. What they do might be described as lobbying, but they do not break the rules of the Lobbying Act. Some experts we talked to disagreed, and I think there's going to be a complaint put into the lobbying regulator looking for an investigation. I think my position, and probably your position too, Lucas, is it's not really clear. I think it's looking at the way the rules are, it's very possible Chamber UK are not lobbyists. And that's because of the way our lobbying rules are. You only have to register as a lobbyist in the UK if you approach a government minister or a senior civil servant on behalf of a specific client with a specific desired request. What Chamber was selling is effectively lots of stuff that goes around lobbying but doesn't break that rule. So that means you don't have to register as a lobbyist. So what you're able to do is collect in information. You're able to meet people informally, meet ministers informally at events. You're able to buy things like posts on an influential Twitter account. You're able to do all of this work, which, you know, most people would see as lobbying. They'd see this as some form of lobbying. But because of the ways our laws are written, and these laws actually, amazingly, these laws date back from David Cameron. If you remember David Cameron, the man who got caught in the Greensill lobbying scandal, well, when he was in office, he talked about lobbying as the next big scandal. And they brought in these lobbying laws, but it's fair to say these lobbying laws are absolutely, they're so poor it's unbelievable. What I think this shows more clear than anything. We haven't, as we said, it hasn't actually been about a bunch of MPs taking dirty money. This is about a system and a structure that is actually ripe for exploitation. I think that's what we've shown on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it shows you things like the revolving door have become so normalized that there's this cottage industry in and around Westminster, which is thriving and there to provide access to whoever can pay.